analysis, however you want to look at it. I'm going to hand this up. Okay, there are some very famous monologues in this play. There's quite a few of them. The first one that I would call a famous monologue, it appears in Act 1, Scene 3. So this was where we read up to last time. So turn to Act 1, Scene 3. Let me see. I can give you a page. This is on page 23. Okay, there are notes in these versions of the book so that you can look up words that don't make sense to you. We're just going to look at this first monologue on the page that I just gave you. So this is, two truths are told. So this is in response to what the witches told him. Two truths are told as happy prologues to the swelling act of the imperial theme. I thank you, gentlemen. He's talking there to Ross and Angus, who have come in to deliver the news that he's a famous Cawdor. And he says, this supernatural soliciting cannot be ill, cannot be good. If ill, why hath it given me earnest of success, commencing in a truth? I am Thane of Cawdor. If good, why do I yield to that suggestion whose horrid image doth unfix my hair and make my seated heart to knock at my ribs against the use of nature? Present fears are less than horrible imaginings. My thoughts, whose murder yet is but fantastical, shake so my single state of man that function is smothered in surmise, and nothing is but what is not. Especially that last line, and nothing is but what is not. And that comes up in literature all the time. You'll see allusions to it. People will quote that all the time. It's a very famous little speech here. He's kind of thinking about this prophecy that the witches have told him. We prophesied that you're Thane of Cawdor. Now he knows that he actually is, and they say you will be king. And that's what he's thinking about here. How do I process that information? So the first thing you're going to do, either by yourself or with the people around you, however you'd like to do it, you're going to interpret this little speech. Shakespearean language, sometimes it's not that straightforward, right? So you're going to annotate this just to figure out what does he mean, line to line. What is he actually saying in this little speech? And just write that out to the side. And then from there, we're going to do something else with it. But you're only doing that for this first little speech. Go ahead. So you're writing to the side and annotating it so that you know what each line means. Like in plain English. Oh, I need my microphone. All right, so the first couple lines, two truths are told as happy prologues to the swelling act of the imperial theme. What is he talking about there at the beginning? Don't worry about getting it wrong, just take a shot. Which two truths is he talking about? Okay, good. So the witches that, oh, yeah.
Yeah, the two truths are the same Cawdor thing as previous.
Exactly. So they told the truth that he is the Thane of Glanis. They told the truth that he's the Thane of Cawdor. So then it says, as happy prologues to the swelling act of the imperial theme. It's like, these are the happy sort of truths that seem to come before the prophecy that I'm going to be king. So he starts thinking about this idea, like I might be king. If they were right about these other things, then I might actually be king, right? And he says, I thank you, gentlemen. He's talking to those guys. And then he starts thinking about this. The supernatural soliciting cannot be ill, cannot be good. If ill, why hath it given me earnest of success, commencing in a truth? What does that part mean? Yeah, Ken.
Basically saying like, how could this like fortune be bad because it's already brought me success? So like, why would they tell me like the truth that gave me success?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So he got the promotion, right? And so like that's great that he was able to get this great position. And then he says, though, if good, why do I yield to that suggestion, whose horrid image doth unfix my hair and make my seated heart to knock in my ribs against the use of nature? He's implying something here. It's not quite stated until a little bit later where he says, my thoughts, whose murder yet is but fantastical. So when he's thinking about this horrid image doth unfix my hair, I think last time I told you, I thought that he was talking about the witches, but he's not here. On closer inspection, he's talking about an idea that's kind of starts circulating in his head. What is that idea? What was it? Regicide. Yeah, good word. Killing the king. He starts to think, okay, if I'm going to be king, let's hurry that along. Like they said I'm going to be king, and the only way that I'm going to be king is if this king dies. And so he starts thinking about some nasty stuff. A horrid image that does unfix my hair and make my seated heart to knock at my ribs against the use of nature. So it's almost immediately you get this sort of here he is, a soldier who has already unseated one person in power. He starts immediately thinking, okay, well, if I unseated that guy, McDonald, and now I get to be famous Cador, if I unseat the king, if I kill the king, then I get to be the king. It's like this sort of logical progression of thoughts, but it terrifies him. He doesn't love that idea. He says, shake so my single state of man. What did you guys think about that idea? Single state of man. Yeah, Ella? Yeah, keep going with that. Exactly. Yeah. So it's like the way you think of yourself now, like I hope you're not going through your day thinking constantly, I'm capable of people. I'm capable of murdering people. If you do, we should get you therapy before anything bad happens. Most of the time we think of ourselves as pretty good people. I think we talked about that when we had our debates. Like you think of your justifications for actions when they are even slightly wrong. But for the most part, you're like, I'm doing a pretty good job, right? But he's saying, just this little prophecy, this little grain of thought in my head has led me to think about murder. What does that say about me? This is shaking my sort of like conception of myself as a man. And he says that function is smothered in surmise. So basically, I am not able to act right now. Like I have to stop and have this monologue for a second because I am like so concerned about where my thoughts immediately went there. And then it says, and nothing is but what is not. Now that's the famous phrase. What does that mean? Nothing is but what is not. It's deep, but without any meaning. No, that's not true. I mean, it does sound really good, which is part of poetry for sure, but there's meaning there. All right, nothing is. Meaning nothing is how things are now. Right now, I am not the king. Nothing bad is happening right now. I have not killed the king. I have not made any decisions. It is nothing right now. Nothing is. But what is not? I know this gets very confusing. What equals the possibilities? So nothing is, that's fine, that's great, but my mind is completely cluttered with what is not. Like the thing that is not is this murder of the king that is stuck in my head. It is not yet. That's kind of like the kind of caveat to nothing is but what is not. It is not yet, but it is here in my head. Does that kind of make sense? Nothing is but what is not. So what I want you to do now is have a partner, you're going to perform this little monologue for each other. But the trick is, when you feel like you should emphasize a word, like, do you emphasize two truths or do you emphasize two truths? When you feel like you should emphasize a word, you're going to hit the table. So it'll be like, two truths are told as happy prologues to the swelling act of the imperial theme, right? That was emphasizing quite a lot. But as you kind of emphasize words, you hit the desk. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Look through that speech, plan which words need to be emphasized and underline them. And this is just a personal choice where you think the emphasis should go. And you're trying to bring out, let me tell you the purpose of this. You're trying to bring out meaning for people who maybe don't speak Shakespearean language anymore and might need a little help with emphasis to understand this speech. What needs to be emphasized in order to make the meaning clear? Okay, everyone needs a partner. It'll just be for like a couple minutes. So grab a partner. There should be even numbers. All right, raise your hand. Who does not have a partner yet? There should be one more. Oh, Olivia, perfect. Donna and Olivia. Olivia, will you move over there? Okay, so you guys are going to perform these now for your partner, and you're going to decide who made it more clear through their emphasis. And remember, to make sure that that emphasis is happening, you're hitting the desk when you emphasize a word. All right, go ahead. So for this part, you at home, you're just going to, so you're annotating the passage, right? Just like everybody else did. And then you're underlining the words that you would emphasize were you to do this activity. Sorry, it's chaotic. I'm going to pause the recording. Okay, so the raven himself is horse that croaks the fatal entrance of Duncan under my battlements. So she's talking about a kind of messenger, but ravens, what are ravens usually associated with? Yeah, exactly. Ravens are kind of supernatural birds, right? Like when we see them, it's like, oh, they're here to like pick at the bones or something. They're used by witches and so on. So the raven himself is horse that croaks the fatal entrance of Duncan under my battlements. The idea here is that Duncan is going to meet his end in Lady Macbeth's house. She, like her husband, immediately comes to the conclusion, we got to murder this guy so you can be king. She says, but where Macbeth is like, ooh, I got to get these thoughts out of my head. These are bad thoughts. Like, I don't want these to sort of undo what I think about myself. Lady Macbeth takes the opposite tack, where she says, I might have some ethics. So I need to make sure that those ethics don't get in the way of my plans, right? So she says, unsex me here basically is meaning like, as a woman, she is, you know, nurturing and caring and so on. And she says, I need to be more like a man right now. I need to be more ambitious. And she needs to, and that will be to fill her from crown to the toe, tuck full of direst cruelty. In order to enact this deed, she has to be completely cruel. Stop up the access and passage of remorse. So like, I don't want to feel any guilt. I just want to have murdering instincts. And then she says, it might be human nature to not want to murder people, right? And so I am calling on sort of like all of hell to make sure that I can follow through on this and that we can kill the king. And she says she doesn't even want to think about the action. See not the wound it makes. Like, I just want him dead. Nor heaven peep through the blanket of the dark. Like, I hope that no like sort of conscience or like message from God will stop me from doing this thing. So she's like full of murderous intentions right now. And this speech is all about how she like intentionally knows that this is wrong. Don't do this. Specifically, like, don't kill the king. Yeah, don't do that. But also don't do it as a hostess either. Like, she's going to invite this person into her home and then kill him. That is like doubly wrong for Shakespeare times. Yeah, Kenton. I don't think so. No, she wouldn't know that yet. Yeah. Okay, so any questions about her speech before we continue? We could deliver this speech, but I think we should move on. Does anyone want to deliver Lady Macbeth's speech? Okay. You know, in Shakespeare times, men played women. Women were not allowed on stage. So Lady Macbeth would be it. And that will be especially uncomfortable in this next scene. Ready? But there seems to be some serious PTSD going on with Macbeth. Like, he's got this kind of split mind in this scene. He's literally imagining a dagger in front of him. Some plays, they will actually, like movie versions especially, they will actually put the dagger in the scene. Other plays, they will not have a dagger. So sometimes they'll have him like looking at an actual dagger, and the audience will be involved in his psychosis. And sometimes it's like this, where we can actually see the kind of psychosis that he's undergoing, right? And he says, I see it, but I don't see it. Like, I have not thee, and yet I see thee still. So it's like he recognizes that this is a hallucination. And yet he also recognizes that it is real in the sense that it is actually guiding him to do something. You think about a dagger with the handle towards Macbeth, it's almost like an arrow pointing down the hall towards Duncan. And all he has to do is reach out and grab that handle. And this whole speech is this back and forth where he's like, I don't want to be insane, and yet I hope I'm insane. I don't want to be passive and just go along with things, and yet I do kind of just want to go along with things. I don't want to believe in fate. I want to believe that I have free will, and yet I also just want to go along with fate. So it's like this back and forth where he's existing in this really impossible place. And even though I have never been somebody who is trying to decide whether I'm going to murder someone, luckily, maybe someday, I can still kind of understand that mindset. Like, I can understand this mindset of like, you want something done. That's what it is. You want something done, but you don't want to be the one to do it, but simultaneously you want that thing done. Or you want something to happen and you want to see yourself as being independent, and yet sometimes it's really nice to let other people do all the work, right? So it's kind of this like back and forth that he's having. And it kind of reminds me of the beginning of the play when he says, so foul and fair a day I have never seen. Like, we get inklings at the beginning of this play that he's in that kind of split mindset. It's a foul day and a fair day at the same time, and he can't quite decide how he's meant to interpret things. And at the end of this, it says, I go and it is done. The bell invites me. And we have that same kind of split idea there. I go and it is done. Putting I at the beginning of that sentence, it's like, I am in charge of my fate. I am going to go towards Duncan, right? But then it is done is kind of passive, right? He's not saying, I'm going to go and kill Duncan. He says, I go, and then whatever happens, happens. Right? Like, it's out of my hands. So he's like kind of having his cake and eating it too there. And then it says, the bell invites me, as though because the bell rang, he has to follow the bell and kill Duncan. So he's like trying to get out of responsibility for his actions. It's almost like he can anticipate, just like Lady Macbeth, that he's gonna feel pretty bad about this once it happens. Okay, let's watch some more before you go. There is a scene I'm gonna need to fast forward through because this movie version decides to do it in a very creepy way.